Well, the B I wore when I was in a nasty mood, stinging, so it's there with Yasser Arafat.
Yeah.
This collection, none of this would have happened if it hadn't been for Saddam Hussein. I was ambassador to the United Nations, and my instructions were to say terrible things about Saddam Hussein all the time, which he deserved because he'd invaded another country. So there was a poem that came out in the newspapers in Baghdad that compared me to many things, but among them an unparalleled serpent. And I happened to have a snake pin, so I wore it when we talked about Iraq. And so I went out after to do a press briefing, and one of the cameras kind of zoomed in and said, "So why are you wearing that snake pin?" And I said, "Because Saddam Hussein called me an unparalleled serpent." And then I thought, well, this is fun. So I went out and I bought a bunch of pins that actually were designed to reflect what we were going to do on any given day. On good days, I wore flowers and butterflies and balloons, and on bad days, all kinds of insects and carnivorous animals. And when people said on the Security Council, "What are we going to do today?" I said, "Read my pins." And I picked that up from the first President Bush, who had said, you know, "Read my lips, no new taxes." They were not my pins, but this one was so terrific. In the end, we bought it, and it was fun because the eyes are clocks and they're turned around, so I would know what time it was, and theoretically.
Oh, they're actually working clocks.
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
Yeah. I'm delighted it's in the country's museum. It makes a big difference to me because I loved representing the United States and very proud to be an American. But I want people to have fun with this because I did it all for fun. It was a way for me, there I am voting on something, to talk about foreign policy in a way that I hope people will see it as less foreign. I love foreign policy, but most of the pins have some kind of foreign policy story. Atlas I bought in France, and it is really Atlas holding up the globe, which is something that one tries to do when you represent the United States and when you are trying to solve some of the problems of the world. And so when we were in really difficult meetings and felt that we had the responsibility to work with our partners, I would wear the Atlas, making it very clear that we had a large responsibility. But I truly did not believe I'd be Secretary of State. There hadn't been a woman before. But I went, I happened to be in one of my favorite jewelry stores, and they showed me this amazing eagle. And I thought, a little pricey. And I said, on the off chance that I become Secretary of State, I actually will go and buy the pin. So I did. The problem was it has a really complicated clasp on it. So through this whole ceremony, it's waving, and I thought, I'm swearing allegiance to the Constitution, and then I think it's going to fall on the Bible, screw the whole thing. So. Out of the plastic bags in my closet, then they were all on the bed. They were organized by species. My heart pin I have worn every Valentine's Day for the last 35 years, except this one because it's been in the exhibit. But what people ask me about my heart pin, and they say, "Well, where'd you get this?" And I said, "Well, my daughter made it." And then they say, "Well, how old is your daughter?" And she's been 20, 25, 30, 35. And she says, "Mom, you've got to tell them I made this when I was 5. But it is Katie's heart, my youngest daughter, and it's a very special pin because it kind of signals what you can do with memories and emotions and links. I went down to New Orleans about 3 years after the horrible, after the Katrina hurricane, and I was speaking at the D-Day Museum at that time, and there was a dinner afterwards, and this young man came over to me and he said, "My father is sitting over there. He is a veteran, and he received 2 Purple Hearts, and he had this box, and he said, my father gave," and I opened the box, and it has 2 amethysts in it. I don't know whether they intended it to represent the Purple Hearts, but basically he said, my father gave this to my mother for their 50th wedding anniversary, and she died as a result of Katrina, and we want you to have this pin because we know she loved you and wanted you to have it. And I said, I can't possibly accept it. And he said, no, it's very important to us that you do accept it. And so I was just totally undone. I did, and I call it the Katrina pin. All of these, yes.
Okay. 11?
I somehow got them all on up here. I've created a bit of a monster because now whenever I go anywhere and I don't have on a pin, people say, well, where's your pin? And so they always want to know, but it's an icebreaker and it's great. And I'm so glad it's all been such a happy experience.